Hi, Nikki. Welcome.
Hi,
Thank you for being here. I'm excited to
thank
have you.
you. Nice to see you again.
Yeah, you too. So, when I visited you, we were talking about many things, and one of them would be integration after plant medicine journeys. Um, can you kind of explain what that means, what integration means?
I think through the course of learning about psychedelic integration, what I've realized is that integration in general is something that our culture is lacking, that we can have life experiences, moving, death, divorce, a child comes in, marriage, new job, just about anything that we deal with in life uh, could benefit from integration. So our culture is very rushed and hurried. And, I know when my mother passed away, I spent 3 weeks dealing with her affairs and was straight back into work. There was no time to really grieve or spend time with my emotions. And so here I am 15 years later, slowing down and actually dealing with that, and with psychedelics specifically, we literally go into different realms. And some say we even speak to God or commune with God, or at least with nature and plants and on a completely different level. So if we as a culture aren't even dealing with these everyday types of things, we're certainly not equipped to deal with traveling through different realms. When we get into these psychedelic spaces, it opens up a lot of different things. It can open up traumatic experiences. It can um, very often help us make us question our place in the world. Once you've seen and experienced these things, like, what am I doing with my life? Question your job, your relationships, where you live, uh, how you serve the world or don't. And so it's a lot of things that get stirred up. And it seems like we really only have access to the depth of those experiences for a very brief amount of time. So the advantage to doing integration with, especially with someone who's skilled at it, is we can dive into what those experiences are, catalog them, make sense of them, create theories around what they might mean or not mean, and catalyze those things into something that you can bring into your life. So I like to say that without integration, with these entheogenic plants, medicines, you're just basically having a party in your head. Sure, you can have profound experiences. Sure, you can have insights and things like that. But if you don't bring it into your world, really, what's the point? So when I work with integration, I think in a lot of ways, integration, the keys to integration is creating new habits around your experiences and bring yourself into your body and finding community that you can relate to around these experiences. So that's really the core of the integration work that I do.
Yeah. So, there were a couple things you mentioned that I think are important. One of them being what these experiences might mean, and then particularly what they might not mean. Because a lot of us will have some pretty interesting ideas about, oh, I saw this and I saw that, and that means I need to do this and that and jump right into this. So maybe you could give us some examples of some things you've seen that they probably did not mean. And then the other thing would be to talk about what a person physically does to come into their body. Because I think more people than we realize are dissociated from our bodies. And we're like, I'm in my body.
Definitely. I don't know if I have any specifics that I would want to get into. we often say that it's best not to make any decisions about anything for at least 2 to 3 weeks after you've had a journey. And there's some theories about why that is, but it's just best not to leave your boyfriend, change your job, move out of your house, spend some time with your experience before making decisions like that. Because I've seen some really tragic things happen because of those hasty decisions. Because, part of what you're experiencing is up-leveled serotonin level, increased serotonin levels. So for some people, that's amazing, especially if you deal with depression or are not in a good space a lot of your time. And so those elevated serotonin levels can almost create a state of mania where you think you've got it all figured out and are ready to make these decisions. So it's really best to let the serotonin levels mellow out and journal and have conversations with people that are skilled in this area or community in this area, and slowly make sense of those experiences as opposed to just acting on those impulses that tend to come up right after. I guess one experience that I can see specifically that's not only frustrating to witness, but also potentially harmful, is that people have these experiences and they decide that they want to be healers and they want to serve medicine and they want to do all of these things. And there's online courses, there are teachers that will teach you, but it doesn't mean that you're ready to really be in service to other people in this way. There's a lot of internal work that goes into being able to hold space for others when they're in their most challenging spaces. And I've met so many facilitators, even like experienced facilitators, that I question their integrity around certain aspects of what they're doing. And I feel like half the people I meet these days want to be facilitators. No, we don't need that many facilitators. We need people who are willing to do the work themselves, on themselves. Because when we do our internal work, by the very nature of doing that work, it ripples outside of us. If I'm a healthy being, if I'm a whole being, that's going to affect everybody I come in contact with. So in essence, I become the medicine. I don't have to serve any medicine. I don't have to do anything particularly special. I just be me in my highest form that I possibly can in this moment, this day and time. And that's the greatest expression, right? And that's me serving the medicine. That's me being of service to my community. And not to say that the world doesn't. Thank you. Not to say that the world doesn't need more facilitators, because I think there's, people are starving for this right now. But we probably don't need as many as some people might think.
Yeah.
And your second question was, remind me again.
How do we physically and come back into our body? Because so many of us think we're in our body because we live in it, but that doesn't really mean that we're deeply connected to it.
For sure. This is such a crazy question, especially in these first world countries where we're just go, produce, especially in America, where we're bred to do, not to be. And so all of our value of ourselves and in others' eyes is superficial, based on what we can produce, what can we create, what can we do to make other people money. And when we take that out of the equation and slow down from the doing and settle into the being, it's really uncomfortable for people. We have so many distractions, television, these things, even conversations with other people, work, stress. There's so many things to distract us from being within ourselves. So some of the simplest things that I share with my clients, and it's just simple things, is meditation. And it doesn't have to be a grandiose 2-hour thing. 10 minutes a day of silence and just being with yourself is really profound. It can be really profound because a lot of us don't know how to do it. And meditation is a practice. It's not something that I don't know. I guess if you're a monk on the hill, you can perfect it. But most people in the city are not going to perfect it. The idea of getting through 10 minutes without a disruptive thought is really hard for anybody to think of in this environment. But it's doable, and it takes practice and training. So if you give yourself that gift of just 10 minutes a day, what it does is it gives your nervous system and your psyche a reference point of what it's like to be silent and still and quiet and in the moment, even if it's just for 10 minutes. But then when things get stressful and you're trying to draw on something, anything for some sanity, you also have that reference point of silence and stillness that you can refer back to. And if that becomes a daily practice, it becomes more tangible for you, more accessible. So that's one aspect. And then more active things. I'm just barely getting to the point where I can do meditation. For me, for the longest time, being still is just not an option for me. And I found martial arts. So through martial arts, I learned about moving meditation. So when I learn a form and I master that form where I can do it without having to think of what's the next move, and I can just get into the fluidity of it, and I know how to breathe, and I know how the movements go, and my body is strong, that's a meditation because it just flows out of me. It's just like a huge, not huge, but like a 2-3 minute expression of my being. Yoga's like that too, can be like that when you get concentrated on the movements. Once you get into the yoga, your first yoga class, probably not going to be super embodying. But if you get into the flow of yoga and you get into this flow of breath, movement, and that fluidity of it, you can find that stillness within you, within yoga. Journaling, I think, is a really great place to become embodied. A lot of the people I work with, and these are my foundational things, is movement of any kind, walking, yoga, whatever. But walking is a hugely practical tool for embodiment. And one of the things that I like to do personally is when I go on my walks and I'm stressed or whatever, instead of just mindlessly walking, getting in the zone, I like to look around and observe everything. I mean, I walk through my neighborhood almost every day. And so I know where everything is. I know these houses. But when I really started observing and appreciating the fact that a human being made that ugly cinder block wall, and how many human beings were involved in that, and that house and that fence, and then nature's contribution with the flowers and the trees and the beautiful blue sky and the air, and just appreciating all that's around me, that also becomes a moving meditation that allows me to get into my body. And then the other thing, did I talk about journaling? Journaling is really huge because it's an opportunity for you to connect and hear your own voice. Some of the greatest distractions we have is that little monkey voice in our head. It's hard to hear ourselves think when we can't even hear ourselves think. And we're thinking about so much of that brain is criticism, or that monkey mind is criticism. And criticism. And so what if we could quiet that part of our brain so that we could hear our truest self, our truest desires, our truest thoughts about the world, and that's a type of embodiment too. So our embodiment doesn't come from the monkey mind; it comes from our true self and our true essence. And journaling, I think, allows me to get all that stuff out of the way, especially first thing in the morning. I love to get up in the morning and just write, and no form. I don't care about punctuation or grammar or anything like that, or even if it sounds good. It's just getting those thoughts and those, what I consider them, boundaries, or they block me from my true self. So getting those words out and then never even looking at it again.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's
Yeah, it's kind of
and there's
like
lots more, but there's a few
yeah,
for you.
that morning writing free form is like a data dump. So like all that rumination that happens, you can just dump it on the page, and then it makes space for your true voice, your higher self, your to be heard. And so I just want to repeat back some of the points you made, which are the importance of embodiment being that it helps us relieve stress. It helps quiet those repetitive inner critic ruminating thoughts, because those are not us. Those are usually comparisons being made about other people to ourselves, and thoughts about being inadequate, and none of that is relevant to what we want to be in the world. That's just noise and distraction. And yeah. So you mentioned martial arts. I just had a women's self-defense intro jiu-jitsu class this past weekend, which was really good for me. Something had come up right before it that like kind of took me back to a childhood memory that like had me shaking. And so I walked into that class already like shaking, and I was like, oh good, we're about to move, so I can move this out of my body, because if we don't move, that stress stays inside our bodies, and then it just gets stagnant and it plagues us, and it just messes with our mind too, causes more distracting thoughts. So it was really awesome to be able to get physical, learn something, and move that energy out. So you spent some time in China, right? Can you give us a little bit of your background, how you ended up in China, and how you got to what you're doing now?
I was dating this boy, and he was taking karate classes. And so I went and took karate classes with him and really found that I liked it. It was something that I had a hard time finding any kind of physical activity that I could stick with. And I just really, really enjoyed it. And so I signed up for karate, and we broke up, and he moved on. And I continued until I was ready to test for my black belt. And my school had an invitation to go to China, to the Shaolin Temple, where is considered the birthplace of all Asian martial arts, the Shaolin Temple, and test for my black belt there. And at this point, it was very much an egoic choice. Oh, that sounds so cool, you know? And so I borrowed and saved money to make this trip happen. And we went to, first of all, it was a group of about 300 people. It was this massive group of white people moving through. This was only 10 years after China opened itself up to the world. So there were not a whole lot of foreigners going there at this point, much less a group of 300. So in Hong Kong, it was where we landed. It was normal to see foreigners there because it was occupied by England for so long. But when we moved into the Shaolin Temple, which is a small village that you fly into a city, and then you have to take a bus for 2 hours into the mountains from there. So it was pretty remote and rural, and it was a city, but it was a very small city. So the 300 mostly white people really stood out. And we had newspapers and TV stations following us around as we made our way through the small city. And we go to the temple, and it was neat because it was kind of like Kung Fu dance off, where some of the best Shaolin students did their forms, and then some of our best students did their forms. And it was like a scene out of a movie, really. It was pouring down rain, like absolutely pouring down rain. And everybody had umbrellas, and then there's these students that they're getting drenched doing their forms in the slippery cement, and it was just incredible to witness. And we did our tour of the temple, and then we had some free time. And so I wandered off by myself to the cemetery. The cemetery had about 200 pagodas, you know, those little kind of pyramid looking statue things. Not all pagodas are mausoleums, but all of them in this cemetery are. And it's interesting because these mausoleums hold the ashes of Kung Fu masters, abbots of the temple, and some of them held the ashes of many Kung Fu masters. If they died in a battle, they would just take them all and put them in these single mausoleums. And it's the history of the temple is 1,500 years old. So you've got these mausoleums that range that whole entire time frame. That
Wow.
is incredible, right? So I walked through this cemetery after experiencing all that I experienced, and I had this overwhelming feeling, emotion come over me, and I started crying, like sobbing, big, ugly tears. And I couldn't explain really what I was going through. I just knew that it was super profound and that it's being there felt really familiar. And so I went back home and felt very confused by my experience. And I also felt quite embarrassed by the group of people that I was with because they were very disrespectful to the culture.
Mm.
And so I went home and I collected my black belt and I left that school. And it turned out that just before I left for China, I'd read an article about a Shaolin monk that was living in Las Vegas. And so I went to his school. I got home on Tuesday. That next Saturday, I went to his school and I did this intense, crazy 2-hour workout at this new school and was in love. I signed up, and then that became my life. I would go and train there 6 days a week and was just absolutely obsessed. And part of my obsession was trying to figure out what had happened to me in that cemetery. And I thought this monk that had just moved here from China, that he could help me understand what had happened. Only problem was that he didn't speak English. So, I mean, I was lucky he was able to teach me Kung Fu, you know? So I started I started learning Chinese because I thought, well, if I could communicate with this guy, he could help me understand what happened in that temple or in that cemetery. So I started studying Chinese, and after a semester of really, really difficult language to learn, I asked him to help me go back to China. So I went back to China by myself this time for a month with 1 semester of Chinese and a Chinese handheld dictionary. There were no cell phones at this point. And so I go back to China and I trained in this Kung Fu school with a close friend of my teacher's. And it was great. It was a wonderful experience, but I wasn't any closer to my answer. So I come home the next year. I went back with my teacher this time. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me back that. Oh yeah, the next time I went back with my teacher, and we went with a group of my Kung Fu, my Shaolin Kung Fu teacher, and like he has all the friendships and the relationships in here, and so it was a totally different experience, like backstage pass version of visiting the Shaolin Temple, and still wonderful experience. Still didn't get my answers. Came back home. The next year, my mother was killed by a drunk driver, and it was obviously very devastating. And
Mm.
I owned a business and I was very much involved in my life. And I decided to go to China for 3 months after that, just to have some space to myself and process what I experienced. And I ended up living there for a year. And so in that year, I learned a lot of the language. I taught English in exchange for Kung Fu lessons at one of the small Kung Fu schools and made friends and learned about myself in a really different way. And after that year, I came back home and I kept going and I kept going and I kept going. And one of the years while I was home, I met a man that I dated for a while. And he was a monk from the temple. And he made arrangements for me to become a disciple of the temple so that I could train there. And so I would go and I would train at the temple. By this time, my language skills had improved so much that I could communicate quite well and understand quite well. So I would spend time speaking with some of the older monks that lived in the temple. And I had access to go meditate in the temple. And I would do that and spend a lot of time in that cemetery. And one day during one of my meditations, I had the realization that I'd lived there before.
Mm.
And that, that I'd had a previous life there. And later I worked with this healer. He told me that I was buried in that cemetery 12 times. I don't know if I believe all that, but I definitely believe that I lived there at least once. And so that really shifted my energy about it. I found myself at peace through that. And through that whole process, I learned a lot about Buddhism and Confucianism and Taoism and the way that Chinese people live. And, living in America, um, even if you're not Christian, this is still a Christian country. So everything that
Yeah.
we do say, everything's processed through the veils of Christianity. And I don't think I realized that until I was living somewhere where it wasn't. It's very much primarily Confucianism. And
What are some of the differences? Or you can
uh,
get to that later when you're.
I think all major religions have the fundamental values of being kind to each other, um, not stealing, not cheating on your wife. Um, Confucianism is really big on family and serving your parents, taking care of your parents, taking care of the elders, respect for elders. Um, there are aspects of Confucianism I don't like either. I think that it's very patriarchal in terms of the way that women are viewed in that culture through the eyes of Confucius. Um, but the family is really important. People, I remember I would eat lunch by myself sometimes and I would get strange looks, and I didn't realize that that was just not something you do there. You don't go and eat by yourself. You always eat with people, you
Oh,
eat with a friend, And so there was a few times that I would have people come and sit with me because they felt bad. What are you doing? You can't eat by yourself. And it was beautiful. And
oh yeah.
the community there was so incredible. The parks are alive with people and they're doing all kinds of activities, playing sports, line dancing, um, just hanging out, food vendors, night markets in China are absolutely incredible. So there's really just this vibrant communal connection that happens that when I come home, I feel lonely in America,
Yeah.
even though
Okay.
I don't have, I have friends, no family, but I felt more connected there. Um, I'm sure there's other things that I haven't been there in a while, so I'm sort of disconnected from what the differences are. And I have to tell you, it's become so much of a part of me that I no longer really see it. And the Chinese people will tell me that I'm Chinese on the inside. They believe that I'm one of them because I've taken the time to immerse myself so much in their culture and learn the language and understand a lot of things about what they do. And so that delineation isn't so clear to me anymore. So I'd probably have to get back to you more on that.
Loneliness in the United States is something that I think a lot of people experience. I have friends and family. I can be in a room full of people and feel completely lonely and isolated because I think because we're so often putting on a mask and not telling the truth, and we're trying to appear happy and productive all the time. One of the questions that we ask each other, are you staying busy? It's like, uh, so that's an interesting thing. So
And
back
it's
to your,
sad.
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so back to your journey before I asked about the differences between Christianity and Confucianism. I don't know if it's the same in China or Confucianism about are they wearing a lot of masks? Are they telling each other the truth, or are they faking their way through life as much as we are in the US?
They're still human. So they're it's different. A lot of what happens in China, and I think a lot of the Asian cultures, is there's the aspect of face and appearances. So very much important. There's something that I did that made my Kung Fu teacher lose face, or I lost face, or something about face. I embarrassed him and he didn't talk to me for a year. I still to this day have no idea what it was. So, obviously I'm not as Chinese as I thought I was, but appearances are huge. And, it's kind of hard to say because China has been so influenced by the West now. Once upon a time, you did not, premarital sex was a taboo. Dating outside your social structure was taboo. I know there was a man I was dating while I was there, and he was a little younger than me. And when his mom found out that he was dating a white woman that was younger than him, she absolutely forbade it. And so he broke up with me. And so there's a lot of respect for the parents and what the parents want, because it's actually a law there that you have to take care of your children in America. You have to take care of your parents when they get old. And that whole one child policy, that's what that is when, as a girl, you go and you get married and you take care of your husband's family. So if you're only allowed one child, you really want that to be a boy so that they can take care of you.
Oh, I never knew that.
Mm-hmm. So that's what was behind that. And now it's interesting, and off topic a little bit, is that there's a disparity between men and women. I think I heard this statistic was like 1 woman to every 25 men.
Wow.
And so what they're experiencing now is the most incredible feminist movement you can possibly imagine, because the women are calling the shots. If you don't have a car and a house and, you never get married, And gone are the days of, it used to be that they would arrange marriages, and that, like in a lot of older traditions, marriage was not an arrangement of love. It was a strategic partnership. And in some ways, I think having those rules in place, and this isn't a really popular view that I have, I think that the most successful marriages that I know, I think we talked about this a little bit, the most long-term relationships, successful relationships that I've seen between men and women have to do with more their strategic relationship as opposed to their romantic love. Because, after that first 18 months of being in a relationship, when the woo feelings fall away, there's got to be something more to that relationship than just chemistry or connection. There has to be that third leg. What is that third leg? Like, what is the commonality? And third and fourth leg, even though, what is, interests are in common. Children is another factor. But if you don't have that third leg of commonality, it's really tough to keep a relationship together. So going back to the Chinese structure, that's what it's foundationally on. The relationships are based on, how can our families benefit each other? And then you've got and this huge thing too, you've got a whole community of people trying to support you in that. Going back to what you're saying about the loneliness, when I first started going there, some of the people that I met, they'd have these little shops, and they're out in front screaming and yelling, trying to sell this and that, especially to us foreigners. And as I got to know them better, I found out that the shop owner, his wife, their child, and his parents all lived in a bed in a tiny room in the back, slept in one bed. And yeah, I don't know if you've ever seen the videos of the motor scooters with mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, and half a cow on the back of a motor scooter. It's like community.
Yeah. And when you have that, interesting, because going back to embodiment and like when you're talking about walking outside and actually noticing nature and the people that built the structures and all the, it helps you get out of your own mind and your own inner critic and your own rumination, because you notice that there's so much of a bigger, there's more than you. There's far more than that annoying voice in your head and that comparison mindset. And when you have, like for marriage, you know, a whole community, how can our families benefit each other? It's like, oh, this is not just about me. So you're going to be a lot less lonely. Maybe our hyper individualism here isn't actually as beneficial as we think.
I think what really ruins it is the consumerism aspect of it. That it's all of our relationships are That's the word I'm trying to say here. Commoditized. The word's not coming.
Transactional. Are they transactional?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then going back to the shadow of the Chinese culture, I think, is most of the motivation comes from judgment or fear of judgment.
Mm.
And the motivation from the parents is fear of judgment. And the motivation is, oh, you got to make sure you got good grades or you're not going to get into the right schools. If you don't get into the right schools, you won't get the right job. If you don't have the right job, you won't be able to get the right wife. So, no, they got their problems too.
Yeah, that's probably all cultures, because when we're in community, we need each other's approval. You know, that's part of tribalism. It's very interesting to try to be an individual within a tribe and not, you know, have conflict and fear of judgment. It's probably never going to happen.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's, I guess we shift our focus on what's the most important thing. Everybody's opinions of us or what we're creating. And there we go, back to spending more time in silence. Maybe we just spend a lot less time nitpicking each other and getting all offended and feelings hurt and, you know, comparison.
You know, one of the other things I really like about their culture is if you sit down to have a meal, it's something you do together. And, you know, when you go into a Chinese restaurant, you know, you have the dishes, the different dishes. And so generally when you go out with a group of friends, everybody chooses one dish and that way everybody's got their favorite thing, but then you can sample everything else. And a lot of times after the games there, or after the meal, there's card games or there's other kinds of traditional Chinese games that a lot of them I didn't learn how to play. Mahjong is one that I did learn how to play. And, you know, drinking is really big in their culture. So there's that too, that often would come after the meals or with the meals. Karaoke, again, it's a communal thing that is a big part of their culture, but game playing of all kinds and physical activity. And yeah, the park culture is really beautiful there. And bear in mind, I haven't been there in 8 years, so who knows what it looks like now, post-COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that emphasis on games and physical movement probably keeps you a little more, you know, it's probably going to be more beneficial to be busy with that than gossip and hyper-consumerism.
Sure. For sure.
I mean, something I noticed this past weekend at this women's full moon ceremony, I was getting into my head about things and I was like, Some vigorous physical activity is going to be what I need right now. So I just went outside and started collecting wood for the fire pit later and, got scraped up, but it cleared that mess out of my head.
I love that you have that awareness to say, hey, I need a state change here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I really wish more people had that type of awareness. And the kind of communities that we are in, it's common for people to have these kind of tools and awareness, and not perfection in it, of course, but it's definitely far less frequent to see someone's wheel spinning and stuck in programming as opposed to they reach out or they have practices or
Yeah, we definitely see a lot more affection and physical activity and competition, like game playing and communication that's not full of judgment, like just pulling the guard and just listening and not always giving advice. Like one of the things that you're a single mom raising a daughter, and you were doing a lot of research into parenting. One of the ways that we have all been parented is to be corrected all the time. It's to be, our parents don't just sit and listen and let us express that we had an emotion. I found myself doing that with my kids, always jumping to the advice or the teaching. And that's not what she's asking for. That's not what they're asking for. They just want to be heard.
Yeah. It's funny you say
And
that.
your daughter's in acting, right?
Yes. Yes. And she has mostly been homeschooled most of her life, and decided she wanted to go back to school this year. So she's being thrust into junior high school of all things. And it's so interesting the way that our conversations are being affected by all the new input from friends.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
just seeing how she holds her own in that. And then, all those judgments that you speak of, right? Those are my own triggers. Those come from the way that my mother spoke to me in these situations. So here I am consciously trying to break these patterns that were very destructive for me. And so my daughter comes home and she tells me about something, and I'm so quick to want to share my opinion about it. And like you said, really all she wants is to share it with me. She doesn't really care what I think about it.
Right.
And she'll tell me, I think this conversation's done.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Which is super triggering for me because I would have probably gotten slapped for that. So just breathe, like, this is so good. This is so good. She has boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you think you cultivated that?
She spent a lot of her life going to women's circles where we had difficult conversations about boundaries. And even if she didn't necessarily understand it, as 2-3 years old, it's just conversations that she's been a part of for most of her life. I think because I'm also conscious of it, that I invite her opinions. I invite her to question me when I inevitably, far more often than I would like, say things that are probably not in her best interest based on my triggers. I take accountability for it. So my hope is that I'm modeling for her a behavior that's different than what was modeled for me. And that accountability is so hard, so important. And think of all the relationships that you've had, and if someone just be accountable when they screwed up, how different things would be.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I catch myself it's easier for me to pop off with my kids because they're kids and they're not scary. But it's also a lot easier for me to be like, oh, by the way, that wasn't about you. That was about me. I'm sorry. Nobody should be talking to you that way. And, just recognizing. I think I was talking to Angela the other day about how when they start speaking to me in a tone that's disrespectful, my automatic response is to be like, don't you talk to me that way. And then, but the way that I parent is to be like, well, to explain why they should or shouldn't be doing something, not just to give them a command. And I'm like, well, what's my explanation? Well, my explanation is my parents told me not to talk to them that way. But the truth is, like, okay, it really is hurtful when you speak to me like I'm not a person. So please don't speak to me that way, and I won't speak to you that way. That's going to be a little more effective than don't you dare talk to me that way. Getting all angry and, a little vulnerability and the truth goes a long way.
The other thing I'm noticing too is when she speaks to me in a certain way or comes at me in a certain way, is looking at my own behavior as the potential model for her behavior. Where am I being that to her? Where am I speaking to her in that way? What can I do to shift and model different behavior? But also with her being in school now and having so many different people giving her new inputs, it's not necessarily me anymore.
Right. Because for the most part, when my kids talk that way to me, I'm recognizing a way that I was talking to them in the past, But now, as they get older, that changes because they listen more to their friends than anybody else.
And it's challenging because I live in the neighborhood I grew up in, and it's not an affluent neighborhood. And this was once a suburban white neighborhood, and now it's predominantly Hispanic. And so it's considered a low income neighborhood. And so there's extra funding that goes to the school that she's going to. Everything's bilingual. They have a mariachi band. Their school band is a mariachi band, which I think is amazing that she's growing up in the midst of all this unique culture, right? But it's also a lot of poverty mindset. And so some of the things that she's picking up is poverty mindset. Like, she was mad at me a couple weeks ago because I was sitting outside waiting for her, and two kids got in a fight. And it was actually a girl who beat up a boy. And so he was embarrassed, and she wailed on him. She got him good. And he walked by me, and I said, hey buddy, you okay? He screamed at me. No. Like, can I call somebody for you? No. Like, okay. Yeah, I'm a mom. I want to, this little kid just got whooped, And so a couple days later, I told my daughter about it. And her first thing is, did you get video? No. Video. Why not? Because this is not anyway. So that was our first conversation. And then a couple days later, she says, Mom, everyone's talking about me at school because they think you're crazy. Why am I crazy? She says, because you tried to get involved in somebody's fight. You don't do that, Mom. I'm like, well, you know what? I do. I do that. You know that I do that. And just because we live in a neighborhood that is of the poverty mindset doesn't mean that you have to acquire that too. That is poverty mindset. Not getting involved, staying out of it is poverty mindset. And and maybe I don't belong in that neighborhood anymore. Maybe I'm creating more problems than it's worth. This isn't my neighborhood anymore. I don't know. But I just told her, I'm sorry, I'm not going to stop being who I am because it's inconvenient for the people around me. I'm compassionate and I care about people. And that's all I was doing, was expressing compassion to him. And then she said that her teacher spoke up and said that I should probably stay out of it because I might get punched. And so that was a reality that I had to consider too.
Right. And that is so interesting, because I think that is part of the basis of poverty mindset. It's scarcity, and therefore everybody's on their own and we don't get involved, and that's why we remain in poverty, because we're not coming together and lending our resources and lifting each other up.
Yeah, that part. So then I find myself thinking, is it good that she's going to this school? Is it a detriment that she's going to this school? And I haven't figured out the answer. I think having exposure to something other than being at home with her mother all day is very good. And then just having conversations like this.
Yeah, she's definitely learning a lot right now. And either way, whether you stay long-term or not, she's going to see at some point the stark contrast between that poverty mindset and your mindset. And hopefully, she's going to choose, most likely, the one that serves her best.
And then it's again going back to parenting, right? Parenting not like I was parented, allowing her the space to make her own decisions about that.
Right.
So hard.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think our parents were a little delusional to think that they were going to get to make the decision for us. I mean, for some, the kids really do fall in line, and they still are pleasing their parents well into their 40s and 50s. But I wasn't one of those. I mean, I did do a lot of the traditional stuff. But my parents were cool in the respect that they did give us, we grew up in a super strict religion and were kept very busy with chores and religion and stuff. But ultimately, their way of explaining things was to empower us with knowledge, knowing that we were going to go into the world and make our own decisions. They certainly made it very clear they did not want us to be dependent on them for the rest of our lives. So it was like, 18, you're on your own. So figure it out, and we're not ones to run home to mom and dad and say, I need money, or, so there was an aspect of independence and empowerment that we got taught, but also a sense of loneliness and inability to ask for help. So there's, and I'd say different people have different degrees of that, different ones of my siblings. Interesting to see how each individual magnifies the different pieces of that.
I love that you touched on that. Going back, so much of my filters these days is through my Chinese experiences. Families live together. Kids live at home until they get married. It's not like there's this magical number where they're expected to be thrust into the world and go figure it all out by themselves. And one of the comparisons that I have is, I remember as a child being forced to go sleep by myself in my bedroom and being terrified and feeling like I had to deal with that on my own because I wasn't allowed to go into my mom's room after a certain age. And I feel like that is sort of similar in turning 18, just because you're at this magic number, you're thrust into the world and maybe you're not ready, or maybe we're not really intended to deal with these things by ourselves. Maybe having that safety net of a parent that's loving and supportive above and beyond that 18 years would contribute to being a more stable human being. We look at during the COVID. Go ahead.
I don't think we're emotionally mature and fully developed at 18, right? Our prefrontal cortex isn't even finished developing till we're 25, right?
Yes. Yeah. So then we wander around as these terrified, scared people trying to pretend like we know what we're doing. And I think there's a lot to that, you know? And you look at during
Yeah.
COVID, how many families were forced back together.
Yeah.
During COVID, we had some people staying at our house because we were out of town for a few months. And so I had a friend who lives in his van and was parked in my driveway and took care of my animals and used my shower and facilities, whatever. And then a little while later, I had another friend who moved from a small remote city of like 6,000 people, moved because he wanted to give his son a better life. And so I wasn't there. Come stay at my house. Once you're on your feet, you guys can move on, whatever. And we're not there. So when I came home, because everything was about to shut down, I already had 3 people living in my house. And then we invited another friend. And so we love to call this our apocalypse pod. And we worked together during that time. We took turns cooking, cleaning. We had one of the guys was a musician. We'd sit and make fire pits in the backyard and have music. We had such an incredible time. And I remember we discussed this numerous times of how guilty we felt that we were having so much fun. Being a community, looking out for each other, and just being present with conscious people. And so still I connect with those people all the time, and we still just shake our heads and we were so lucky. And also we want more of that.
Yeah.
But when it came time to get back out into the pressure cooker, it fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like a disconnect there, you know? How can we have that kind of community and closeness when we're always in that grind? And that brings it back to one of your original questions about embodiment. We're all running around disembodied, trying to make enough money to afford these overpriced houses that we don't ever get to even spend any time in because we're so busy trying to make money, trying to afford these houses that we can't afford. I don't know. So I
Yeah.
did an
And I mean, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
It's interesting. We keep getting the bigger and bigger house, and there's only 4 people living in it. And we weren't meant to only live with 1 other adult and 2 children. Like, our brains need more stimulation than that. So it gets lonely, it gets old, having the same arguments over and over, having the same way of entertaining. We need other people's input because it makes life more fun and interesting and exciting. I mean, how much time do we spend, because it's just the 4 of us, just staring at our device because we've run out of things to talk about? I mean, our experiences are so narrow. Each of us, going to work, going to school, coming back, living with the same people. Like, why do we think that was the ideal? I don't know how that happened.
Makes me crazy because I like to travel. I like to have lots of different experiences and around lots of different people. My daughter likes to be at home with her cats.
Okay.
What do you want to do Friday night? What do you want to do? I'm going to stay home. It makes me crazy. So I did this experiment a couple weeks ago. I took a bunch of classes this year, and all of them came to an end around the same time. And I was just exhausted. 8 months of really intense courses. And I just sat on my sofa and just didn't do anything unless I fully needed to. I went to the gym. I ate good meals. I took care of my kid, took care of necessities. But above and beyond that, I did nothing. I forced myself to do nothing. And when I got into that mindset of I should be doing something, no, did nothing. And I'm just going to do this for a week. And that week passed and I wasn't satisfied. I'm like, I'm not done yet. So I gave it another week. And the third week rolled around doing that. What ended up happening is I started to feel the dysregulation in my nervous system. Not once in my entire life have I allowed myself to just be intentionally still. I started working at 15 and a half and haven't stopped until those 3 weeks. And my intention was that I wouldn't do anything until I was truly inspired. So after about 3 weeks of that, I started getting bored and I still sat in it. This is starting to get lame. This is not fun. And I still sat in it. But then the inspiration started coming where I couldn't sit on the sofa because I wanted to do whatever it was so badly that I couldn't sit there any longer. And I know not everybody has 3 weeks to sit on their butts doing nothing, but if you do, I highly invite you to give that a try because I got to know myself in a way that's completely different.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I think more of us than we realize do have time to sit on our butt after our little 8-hour or 10-hour day, to not get distracted by something on our phone, or to not fill our head with somebody else's voice, and to just sit with the discomfort of just being, so that we can actually hear our own inspiration. I think so many of us will say, oh, I don't know where my creativity has gone. I don't have any inspiration. I don't even know what I want. I don't know what I love. Well, that's because you always got somebody else's voice in your head. Like, you're filling your head with podcasts, and I do it. Podcasts and movies and books and games on our phone, whatever. Talking. I mean, at least having a conversation with a friend, hopefully you're talking as well, so there's some of you involved. It's interactive. But otherwise, you're just a receptacle for other people's thoughts, and there's no space for your own inspiration to come through.
Mm-hmm. What's lighting you up these days?
Singing, dancing. Podcasts is it's really fun having these conversations with these amazing conscious people, working through stuff that has been confusing for, most of life. Mm-hmm. These conversations are a lot of fun. How about you?
The culmination of the 8 months of study and 3 months of sitting on my sofa has evolved into, without any effort whatsoever, clients being referred to me. Like, I made space and then here they came, and kind of in awe of that. Because, you hear people talk about it, but when I get to witness it firsthand, it's magical. And so instead
I don't think
of
enough people talk about that. So
right?
Can you kind of explain what that means?
It's still kind of conceptual for me because I've just been hearing it. Embodying it is a different thing, but clearing my head of all the clutter, we're getting into energetics here, right? How much time do we have? Do you have a time limit?
Well, not really.
Okay, I think I actually do. But so I'm reading this book right now called The Yugas, and Eric talks about it. And it talks about the cycles that the earth goes through, 24,000-year cycles, and how when we're the furthest away from the galactic center, which is like our big black hole thing that we circulate around, it's our darkest hour of humanity. But as we get closer, we have more access to our gifts and our talents and longevity and superpowers and things like that. So we're in an era where this is an era of energy. And so being raised in a Christian culture, in a judgy culture, in a capitalistic culture, we don't generally spend enough time with ourselves understanding our own presence and our own energies. So my understanding of the theory of how it works is that when you have receptive energy and you move all the clutter out of the way, then you become your own vessel for knowledge and experience, and you put out to the universe, I would like to have a certain number of clients every month to bring me this much income, and most importantly, create these kind of results for the people that come to me. I didn't really know that it was possible until I got to witness it happening for myself. It was just a conceptual thing. It still kind of is, because it's new to be witnessing it in this context. But literally, people I don't even know are calling me, asking for help, and paying me to help them. And the results are freaking amazing, because it's basically what we're doing right here. That's what I'm doing. I talk a lot less, though.
Yeah. More questions, more listening.
More listening, holding space. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I'm also in that practice of, because usually I'm like typing on a computer, frantically grinding away at how am I going to do marketing, and none of that's ever been effective. I've been doing it for years and it's never worked at all. And so recognizing that and being like, okay, tried that strategy, not going to keep trying it. I'm going to go ahead and empty out clutter and clear space and be in the receiving mode, as Abraham Hicks calls it. Just kind of visualizing and creating your highest outcome for yourself and the other people that are going to be involved in the situation. You're creating it energetically and produce any results. But it's so difficult being in this culture of doing.
It does not lend well to it. Yeah. There's another experiment that I think you're familiar with too, the human design.
Yeah.
So part of my 3-week experiment was around human design. So I'm a generator, and generators are work best when they respond. And so part of the intentionality of that 3 weeks was I only do what I respond. I only follow what I'm responding to. So if there's nothing to respond to, there's nothingness. But also what I realized is that sometimes I'm too busy to realize that there's something to respond to. There's too much busyness going on. And that was kind of a fun part of it. And then also, I don't want to be making content. Also, I don't want to be on social media. It's fun. It's a great way to interact with people. And I like to see what people are doing in the world. And, I have my algorithms dialed in to where it's pretty positive stuff, or at least meaningful if it's not positive. And so, I've got a pretty good thing going with my social media, but I don't want to be there all the time. And I don't want to spend hours creating content. It's just, no, it's a big no for me. So I've been thinking, I have a marketing background, so I've been thinking about different ways that I can market without doing that. And I'm going back to my roots. My roots were, I worked in the music business for 30 years, and I did grassroots marketing. I distributed flyers. I went out and got in the community and read the field and responded and connected people in that way. And so I'm going back to my roots, and I'm connecting with old people. And so I've come to the conclusion that in my community, amazing, we live in Las Vegas, and we have cacao ceremonies, and we have drum circles, and we have breath events and all of this amazing stuff. Every weekend you have a choice of probably a dozen. But it's all pretty much the same people marketing to the same people. And so no one's really able to make a living at it. So
yeah.
the concept I've been playing around with lately is getting into new communities that don't know about us. So I'm speaking next weekend, not 2 weekends from now, at a hip hop networking event.
That's cool.
I don't know what's going to happen with that, but I definitely know that
Yeah.
my clientele is not the hip hop community currently.
Yeah.
But maybe it is if I get in
Right.
there.
Yeah.
I did another event. So one of my fun things to do, I might bring my tea table to Sedona, by the way. I like to serve Kung Fu tea. I don't know if you've ever experienced that before, but Kung Fu
No.
itself, Kung Fu, my Kung Fu teacher says Kung Fu means time and sweat, or in other words, effort. It's not just, here's some tea in a tea bag, it's beautiful, it's ceremonious, it's slow, and you drink it slowly and you sip it and you have conversation over it. So I love bringing out my tea table, and I love doing integration over a tea table, by the way. So I got an invitation to go to this goth event. I used to sell trinkets and stuff, and I quit doing that a few years ago. And she just knew me from that. And I said, well, I don't really have inventory anymore, but can I bring my tea table? And she's sure. And they were really accommodating, let me set up. And I'm just sitting there watching this community who was not even remotely interested in talking to me. Here they are in their dark clothes and their dark makeup and here I am like, but there's always someone, right? And so through the night, I was there for 5 hours, and I only had about 5 or 6 people sit with me and drink tea with me. But those exchanges were amazing. Amazing. And so that's why I'm doing it, right? To make new connections. And in that room of hundreds of people, those 5 connections that I made were like really amazing. Clearly, goth is not my crowd, but I did it. I tried it.
Yeah. But still, it only takes connection with one person at a time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. It's interesting because I'm also a generator, and the thing that I would go out and network in person, and I absolutely hated it, talking, but I hated it. I think I hid behind social media because I didn't have to be there. So I kind of tried to make that work as a way of continuing to hide, because I'm more of an introvert. But I got a lot more clients when I was out networking in person. They rarely, if ever, came from the event I was at, but just me being out and about around people seemed to bring clients. And even if they came from somewhere I didn't expect, often it was from Yelp, and it was like, Yelp? I don't post anything on Yelp. I'm never on Yelp. I don't even leave reviews. That's interesting. Yeah.
I don't know if you relate to this, that when I first learned about human design and I found out I was a generator, and then I learned about the projector, I related more to the projector. This is who I am. I'm a projector. This has got to be wrong. And then I surrendered to the fact of, okay, I'm a generator. And I stopped trying to live like a projector and started living like a generator. Oh my gosh, this is so much easier just to be myself.
Yeah.
I think so too.
I think we're trained to be projectors. Yeah. And that's only about 20% of the population. So 70% are generators. And it's like, because when we're lit up, we light others up. And so it like spreads the energy and yeah, so focusing on doing a lot more of lighting myself up instead of trying to make things happen all the time.
Yes. And I don't know if you went through this too, but there's a part of my ego that was like, "Oh, generator.
Yes. No, I'm not part of the 70%. I'm part of the small fraction.
Yes.
I'm rare. I'm special.
Right? But then, there's
Yeah.
this subcategories within the generator when you realize that, oh, okay, I'm still unique because I'm a 6'1", and I have these certain aspects of my generatorness that does make me unique. And
Yes.
that's where the magic's at right there, right?
Yeah, I'm barely learning it, but it's very interesting because the whole chart comes into play far more than just that. That's just the way that you use your energy. That's one aspect of, yeah. So
And
it's
it's such
pretty
a huge
cool. It's really
generalization.
fun.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, we are over time. Oh, it's 12:22. Lovely.
Hey.
I think we have more to talk about, so hopefully we can do this again
Thank you.
if you're up for it.
I would love to. I really enjoy your company and your energy, and I feel so blessed that I got to have you in my home during the first hurricane in Las Vegas.
Yes, me too. That was quite the phenomenon. It was so awesome to be there. Yeah.
And thanks to you, my daughter now likes sourdough bread.
Oh, good. That's so funny. Oh, that's amazing. She's so cool. Yeah, I want to talk more about the music and the acting, all the aspects of your life that we didn't get to talk about this time. So let's do it again soon.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Appreciate
See you in a couple weeks.
Yes, looking forward
too.
to it. Got a big hug for you.
Yeah. I want to have some tea.
Yes. Yeah, definitely going to bring the tea table this time.
Okay, cool. All right. Bye.
Bye.